Hi.
Hey, good morning. How are
Good morning.
you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So
Um,
I was gonna try to do sorry, my mind. Auburn, please hush. My mind just went blank.
oh, that
Gallery
screen
view thing.
gallery view.
But I don't see it right. Oh, there we go. So she said, let me go back and look at her email. I'm sorry. I will mute this in just a second because I know you can hear
No,
my
that's
daughter.
fine. No worries.
So
Um,
she said she wants it to be in gallery view so you can see all the speakers at once. So it says it's in gallery view now. Gallery view and speaker view. You want it to be on gallery view. Yeah. So it's already in there.
okay, great. All right, Ken is emailing saying that he didn't get the invite. Let me find it again. Hey, Tiara, do you happen to know if his invite is specific to him, or can I send him mine and have him join?
I think it'll just say your name.
Oh, gotcha. All
Yeah,
right.
because that's how the other one is. It says your name. So okay, you're fine, Auburn. Stop. So I don't think it matters. It's just gonna say your name.
Let's see.
So it didn't work the second time.
Um, Give me just a moment here. Because we've got his email address correct. I'm not sure if it's going to his spam or what's happening here. Ursula, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Just working on getting Ken signed in. Bear with us.
Sure.
But you got the URL. It worked. Oh, okay. So it's got you registered as well. It on the panel, like when I'm looking at the screen, it shows you as me.
Here, I can change that. Hang on. I can rename myself, and Ken can do that too. So don't worry about sending in the same invite.
Okay, great. Yeah,
oh, that's
let's
perfect.
do that.
Yeah, it's just on the upper right corner of the screen where your little picture is. You click on that, and the drop down has rename on it. So just for future reference.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I used to use WebEx quite a bit, but not learning Zoom on the daily, right?
Right. Yeah, WebEx is a kind of more of an organizational thing. All businesses seem to use Zoom quite a bit. Such a great platform. There's so many options. And
did you notice the screen change? Does it show you, like, is it showing you two side by side?
Well, I changed that in my view. So
well, I'm wondering if I should leave it like this, because I think she wanted it to have all the panelists up side by side. Do you think this is what she meant, Tommy?
The only thing is, as people join, it'll just end up being a big, huge checkerboard. I didn't realize I was changing it for everybody's view.
No, I just changed it to speaker view, but there's only going to be 3 of you.
Okay.
So my boss had said that she wanted it to be where everyone was up at once instead of, it just zooming in on one speaker as they're speaking. So I don't know if I should leave it like this or go back to the other.
Yeah, but the only thing is, if you change it to gallery view, it will also should add all the participants as well. So if 100 people come, you're going to have 100 squares on the screen.
Oh, under gallery view?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
So
I should leave it this way.
Probably best, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and once Ken gets signed in, I think it'll continue to just show all 3 of us or all 4. And then as folks come into the participant piece of it or attendee. All right. Yeah. All right. There's Ken.
Takes a second to connect. Hi, Ken.
How are you, Ken?
Good. Can you hear me okay? This computer sometimes gets a little scratchy.
It does have a little distortion. And then also, too, I learned a really cool trick from Ursula this morning. you are showing up as Tommy Dennison, and we can help you change that on that bottom right corner of your screen. Ursula, do you want to talk him through that?
Wait a second. I'm going to change computers because it'll be a better audio. Okay.
And if you just switch to your headphones, if you have Apple headphones, that'll fix the problem, or it should. So you won't have to change computers unless you want to.
I'm sorry. What did you say, Ursula?
I said you can switch to your Apple earbuds, and that should fix the audio problem. And you don't have to take the time and change computers. Try that.
Yeah, the audio seems clean.
Well, I already switched.
There we go. Okay. Oh, I thought it was more involved. So for the renaming, Ken, if you just mouse over the upper right corner of your screen and see those 3 dots.
I see a bunch of dots.
Yeah, so click on that.
Yeah.
And the drop down should include rename.
Yeah.
And you can type your name in there. There you go.
Right. Awesome. So how are y'all doing?
We're great.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I greatly appreciate y'all being a part of this. I figured I'll just do a little intro piece, introduce you both, and then we can dive right into it and go from there. And then once we get the session recorded and everything, we'll post all the resources that y'all have shared with me. But I'll mention that webinar that you have next week, Ursula, and then Ken, if there's anything that you want me to mention, please let me know.
Yeah, I'm scheduled to be on the Platinum weekly webinar on Friday at
1 o'clock.
Is that what time it is?
I think so. Yeah, Sandra's been participating in those.
Yeah, I'm scheduled to be on there.
Okay.
Is that a chamber thing, Ken?
No, that's Mike Murphy's group. I actually got to touch base with him and see if he still wants me, but that was the plan at this point.
Okay. Excellent. All right.
I'm going to send him an email right now to make sure he still loves me.
So one of the things too, and get y'all's feedback really quickly is, some of the businesses, may have already chosen to, lay folks off. So I may just position the questions just a little differently, just with wording and whatnot, but the content will stay the same if that sounds okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you might leave it a little broad just because I think there are people still thinking about that.
Right. No, absolutely. Agree.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. And then, as I mentioned in the email, I'm going to basically just try to put the questions that you both submitted around, employees and all that kind of all together. Only because they're so pertinent, and I think it'll flow really well.
So people will be joining now, but you're also taping this for later access. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we'll hit record, and right now we're not live yet. Tiara, who is our host, will have the ability to let us go live in just a moment, and then we'll start recording as well.
Great.
And whenever y'all are ready, because it's 10 o'clock, I'll go ahead and hit live.
Okay. Yeah. Give us just a second here.
Okay.
What was that?
Can you send us the link? I'd be happy to share it after too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Let's see here. All right, Tiara, we're ready to go live. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody. We'll allow a few moments to allow everyone to continue to get signed in. But welcome to Strategies for Business Continuity. All right, so it's about 1 after. We'll go ahead and just give folks another minute. We've got about 15 folks, or I'm counting, signing in. So good morning and welcome. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. It's about 2 after 10. Good morning and welcome to Strategies for Business Continuity, keeping your business going during the pandemic and beyond. My name is Tommy Dennison, and I'm the Director of Member Development here at the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. It's my pleasure to introduce both of our panelists today, Ken Kaplan of Kaplan CFO Solutions, welcome. And Ursula Jorch of Work Alchemy. Good morning and welcome to you both. Thank you both for being here.
Good morning, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about this in preparing for this today. You know, y'all have are both working quite extensively with your clients right now covering this topic. And I wanted to ask you both first. I think this would be a great thing to kick off our conversation. Ursula, I'll start with you. What are people finding in business currently most challenging right now?
Well, there's a few major things people are dealing with. One is just feeling stressed and not sleeping well, and that relates to getting their feet under them, feeling not so grounded, and it's really tempting to get into reactive mode and panicking. So many things have been thrown into question. Other things that I'm seeing are issues around employees. Do I lay off? Do I furlough? And really having concerns about that. And of course, cash flow issues with changes in revenue. So those are the main things I'm seeing right now.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Ken, how about you? Same question. With your clients that you're working with, what are they finding, or what are you finding that they're finding most challenging right now?
Well, clearly I could sum it up in one word, and that is uncertainty. There's uncertainty, you know, about my employees' health. There's uncertainty about the government financing program. That's been very big question over the last 4 days. Uncertainty about when we'll be able to get back to work. Uncertainty about what customers will come back and how fast will they come back.
Yeah, certainly a lot of unknowns, and I imagine, you know, it's certainly very stressful time indeed for everybody. So I wanted to tackle the topic because I feel that a lot of businesses may be facing this question. And Ken, I'll start with you. And that's the large one, that should businesses continue to pay their employees, or that hard decision to lay them off?
Well, that's obviously a very, very key question. And from a purely financial standpoint, the first thing that a business owner has to consider is, how large are his cash reserves? How long can he hold out? If he continues to pay his employees, does he have a month's worth of cash? Does he have a quarter's worth of cash? So that's a key question. I think the other key question about this, and again, I'm speaking from a financial perspective, not from a human perspective, and I apologize for that. But I think the business person has to look at the different positions in his business or her business, and ask herself, how trainable would people be in these positions? Is it going to take 2 weeks to train new employees? If I lay somebody off and they get a job at Amazon or Ingalls, and I can't bring them back, is it going to take 2 weeks to train that person, or is it going to take 6 months to train that person? So that is, from a financial standpoint, that's a key question. If it's going to take 6 months to train that person, then from a financial standpoint, I would argue that that's a position that you need to continue to pay through this crisis. If it takes only a couple of weeks, and you also have this, you don't have a lot of cash reserves, then unfortunately, you have to consider laying people off. I'm being asked, why are so many businesses laying people off when we have this government program, the Paycheck Protection Plan, that is specifically put there so that we don't have to lay people off? Well, the problem is, it's really hard to understand how much you're going to get and when you're going to get it. A week ago, it was a lot less clear than it probably is today, how much you're going to get. You're going to get 2.5 times your average monthly payroll cost. And then when you're going to get it, we're hearing probably about 72 hours to a week. But do you really want to rely on what we're hearing from the government? So if you're one of those people that doesn't really want to depend on what the government is telling us, then you're probably one who's more apt to lay people off.
And Ursula, covering the human side of this, these tough decisions, related to that, if a business does have to lay people off, how can the business owners do it in a compassionate way?
Well, I think it's really important to keep people in the loop in terms of communicating with them that this is even something you're having to consider. The more you can communicate, the more clearly you can communicate and help people understand, here are the real implications of the business, and even being able to keep the business sustainable. That does help give people some perspective. I really recommend that people communicate a lot. Mm-hmm. So if you feel like you're communicating too much, mm-hmm. it's okay. This is the time to do it. People mm-hmm. want to hear from you. They want to know what's going on. And if you do have to make that decision, which is always a tough one, and I know many business owners are struggling with that, do it with kindness and compassion as you're letting them know about that. Talk with them directly. Do not send an email or a text or some other impersonal way of communicating. It's important to convey the decision directly, mm-hmm. and give them resources. Let them know what's available to them in looking for support in the form of unemployment insurance. Mm-hmm. And you can probably come up with some resources yourself around what else you can offer, but that will really help people feel supported as they move away from the business.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And Ken, I wanted to circle back around on the financial side again. You know, when there are obviously a lot of resources out there currently for small business, we've had several webinars like this one to let folks know about those. But could you share some insight? You know, what a business should be thinking about? You know, do they want to go in debt in order to keep their employees on payroll, or generate a minimum amount of revenue? And if you could speak to just the thought process behind, you know, making that decision around, you know, taking out loans during this time.
Yes, this is a very key question. You know, it obviously we'd prefer to keep our employees on the payroll. Our employees are the backbone of our company. But as a business owner, you have to ask yourself, how much debt am I willing to go into, and how long is it going to take me to pay this off in order to keep these employees on the payroll? Fortunately, the Paycheck Protection Plan will enable the business owner to, the debt that she goes into that's used to pay employees. Some or most of that will be forgiven, and you can include that in your calculation. The government is saying that they're going to forgive 8 weeks of compensation relative to that loan. So you can clearly include that in your in your calculation. There's been a lot of stress around how does this, what exactly are the rules, those are starting to clear up, but I got to tell you, over the last 3 days, there's been a lot of questions about that. And I'm talking about over the weekend. That's why a number of banks wouldn't even accept applications on Friday, which was supposed to be the first day. So again, if you've got employees that you definitely, they're going to take a long time to retrain. It's certainly a good strategy to keep them on the payroll, knowing that this money that the government is lending us will be forgiven to the extent that it's used for the first 8 weeks of payroll. Now, that could be extended, but we don't know if it will be extended.
And if I can add a couple of ideas too to this conversation around laying people off. One company that I've done work with is they handled this in a really perhaps different way. They got everybody together, the company's small enough to do that, and talked about what can we do to allay costs, kind of reduce the expense related to employees, and at the same time keep as many people as possible employed and keep the business going. And they were able to come up with a group joint solution where people's time was cut to 80%, and they were able to keep most people on the payroll. So this is a really great opportunity for some creative solutions around this. It doesn't have to be a black and white, yes, no, I will lay people off. So this is where it's really important to manage stress, because when you're stressed, it's really hard to be creative. So being able to kind of tap into your creativity, it's not just a self-maintenance thing in terms of keeping my stress low, but it helps you function much more creatively and innovatively right now, which is super important. And also another thing to consider is that there's actually opportunities for new streams of revenue, for additional revenue in this time. And a thing to consider is, will you need those folks to help you roll out those offerings as well? So that's another factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point, and thank you. Speaking of, you touched on stress levels for the team, the owners, etc. Could you share some ways that you've heard from business owners what they can be doing to keep their stress levels down and manage their own anxiety during this time? And I'll open that up, open that up to both of y'all, but Ursula, please.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. And this is something I recommend to my clients anyway, but I think it's so highlighted right now how important this is. So the first thing I always talk about is breathe. What happens when you're under stress is your breathing gets really shallow, and it doesn't help you to either make good decisions or feel calm. So if you notice your breathing being really shallow, just take some deep breaths. There's some breathing exercises I can offer as well, but that's just a general thing to keep in mind. It's really helpful to have a morning routine to ground your day. So rather than plunging into looking at what fire you need to put out today, what's on your email, what's on your phone, set a morning routine that the elements I recommend are exercise, some kind of way to tap inward so that your intuition's available to you. So meditation's one way. And the third aspect is to make sure that you're getting some positive input, that not everything is bad news. So whether that's reading or videos, that's another good element to include in the start of your day. So by doing that, you'll come up with much better solutions to whatever you're dealing with right now.
Yeah, great point for sure. Taking care of our employees and our team is it's equally as important to do self-care as well. So you can be your best self for your team. Ken, any tips that you'd like to share that you're hearing across the companies that you're working with that they've shared with you?
I think the business owners that have handled this the best so far are those that are trying to do as much planning, scenario planning as possible. That would include financial modeling. To the extent that business owners will plan various scenarios, you'll be able to see how bad it does get or doesn't get. And once you see that, then it's easier to react to it. So I think planning is very important. I think the other thing I want to go back to is core values. There is never a greater time than now for a business owner to look at her mission statement, at his core values, and make sure that we are following the core values that we have really promoted to our entire team. Because business owners, of course, we are leaders, and our employees and our customers and our suppliers are looking to us for leadership, and we have to demonstrate our core values. Many businesses, most, will survive this. And I firmly believe many businesses will come out much stronger in this. But I think one has to really pay attention to those core values and ask yourself, am I holding up to those?
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I completely agree with Ken. I think in the short term, it can seem tempting to go off and not adhere to what you feel is most important, to your values, to your mission statement. But also the two are linked. If you have that mission and the values really clear, then it's easier to plan when there's uncertainty. You have some kind of framework around which to do planning. And even if it's short-term planning, that's certainly what I recommend, rather than, this is not the time to look at the 5-year plan in any detail, but it's really about what's happening in the next 12 weeks, because that can really shift what's going on in your business and your long-term sustainability.
Well, we are doing some 6 to 12 month financial and really business planning, because some businesses need to try to figure out how fast the demand for their products or services are going to come back. And in some industries, that's going to take, it's not going to be shape curve. It's going to be more like a U at best. So some industries are really going to have to think about what's this going to look like for the next 6 to 12.
Yeah, and with that point in mind, I wanted to open this up to both of you all, kind of talking about, the short term for businesses to think about, and then we'll move on to the long-term questions. But for both of y'all, how do you recommend that our businesses in the community can handle their supplier relationships right now during this period? And Ken, I'll put that to you first.
Well, I'm going to go back to Ursula's comment about employees. One of the most important things that we have to do as business leaders is communicate, whether it's communicating to our employees or customers, and especially our suppliers. Let them know how long we call them, be proactive, don't wait for them to call you, and tell them, look, I'm going to need a 30, 60, whatever day extension on my invoices. Here's what I see as far as the business coming back. We're going to need to delay shipment of some of the purchase orders we have out. But this is the time to communicate. And to the extent possible, I've seen communications that are just a mass email to their suppliers, where I've seen others which are, picking up the phone and calling. Well, you can imagine which is better if you can do it. And even if you can't do it personally, but you've got 2 or 3 employees that could join you, I think it's really critical to call your key suppliers and talk to them. And by the way, you want to talk about relieving stress? You call your suppliers and talk to them. I bet you'll be surprised how much stress is relieved.
Yeah, thank you. Ursula, same question. How are your clients currently tackling those supplier relationships during this time?
Well, I agree with you, Ken. I think that communicating directly is super important. And to be able to talk to your suppliers directly is so valuable. You can come up with some solution that will serve you both. And when you think about it, your suppliers are really an integral part of your business. So how are you going to treat people who are important to your mission? And are you treating people in alignment with your values? And that becomes super important right now too, because everyone's under stress. You are, your suppliers are. How can you set an example of dealing with people in a way that's really going to be reflective of your values? I think too that suppliers are moving forward themselves with their own plans, and you might even have opportunities there in terms of how you can support them that will possibly have an impact on your revenue, but certainly strengthen the relationship and be able to build on that. You're going to get a lot better cooperation and just a collaborative approach to what people are dealing with. So ask them, what are you dealing with right now? How can I help? That's such a valuable question right now. And the better you understand that, the better your supplier relationship becomes, and the more you can offer and contribute and even potentially create some more revenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And Ursula, you touched on something earlier, keeping current state as top of mind right now about looking at opportunities for businesses to potentially, pivot and look at, different ways to do business. But, what are some things that businesses could be doing right now to be sustainable that you're seeing across the individuals that you're working with? How have they shifted to navigate this new environment we're in?
Well, companies have a lot of freedom right now to come up with things that are either an expansion of what they're already offering or even a new area. And you want to keep your brand alignment in mind, your mission in mind, of course, but there are still really opportunities there. Like distilleries are making hand sanitizer. Before the beginning of the H1N1 pandemic, a few years ago, Risa launched Flu Tracker, which has become popular, and they attracted several large new customers. Restaurants are expanding their takeout and delivery options, and one of my clients is expanding their marketing services to focus on the pandemic and what their clients are dealing with around that. So the key to this is really to be curious, to ask questions, to be creative and even innovative in the face of all this. So again, to reiterate what I was saying about suppliers, ask your customers and clients, what do you need? How can I help? And see what you can do about providing it. And by doing so, you're really going to expand your scope, not just for the short term, where we're all concerned about viability during the pandemic, but afterwards, you'll have new opportunities to pursue after that. And the other thing is, this relates to the stress question as well. Some business owners are really concerned about carrying a load right now. And this is not the time to be a martyr. Allow yourself to be supported by your team and involve them, and see what creativity people working for you come up with. You might be surprised by some new ideas that you wouldn't have come up with on your own.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. Ken, same question. The companies that you're working with, have they shifted to meet this new environment? What are you seeing with them?
Sure. Yes, we do have some companies that are literally shifting in order to support the effort to build ventilators, make face masks, even provide the COVID-19 test. So, those opportunities are out there, and there is quite a bit of financial support for those efforts. So if you think that you've got the ability to do that, the only thing I would be concerned about is you have to ask your question, how long will the demand last for these extra services or products that you're going to provide? The other thing I think that I've tried to encourage our clients to think about strongly is, remember to continue to dedicate resources to marketing. I think the one thing we're going to see from this is the enhancement of marketing business to consumer, the digital marketing of business to consumer. If you were just kind of lightly tapping in that before, or maybe quasi working in that before, this is a great opportunity to enhance that marketing channel. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see some specialty retailers not make it through this downturn. But consumers are going to buy the product somewhere. So they're either going to go to the mass retailers, or they're going to do some more buying online. Even my 89-year-old mother, my 89-year-old mother, is now buying her groceries online. I would have never thought of that a month ago. So there's going to be a lot more people going there. So I do believe businesses have to really step up their skill level at digital marketing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great point, Ken. I mean, we've all shifted to, this online environment, as we all remain in quarantine to, stop the spread of coronavirus. I want to, and y'all have had some great points with this. And if you don't mind to both share, and I think you've highlighted initially with that last answers, but what are some things that businesses could be thinking about right now to increase their revenue? It may seem counterintuitive right now, but I wanted to ask that, Ursula, if you don't mind to go first.
Sure. To expand on what I said and Ken's ideas too, I agree. I think that the online world is getting a lot of interest right now, and people are developing a facility with it. So that is true not only within your business, but also in your customer base. So as Ken said with his mother, there are people who would never have done certain things online, or their preference was to do some in-person things or other alternatives, or go to a store. There's opportunities in the online world that you can explore. Is there a way for you to convert what you're doing to an online platform? Are there delivery methods that you can introduce online ordering? I think that those are huge opportunities that are opening up. And I mean, there's also a great opportunity right now to do some market research. You can, as people are able to use Zoom and other platforms for meeting, you might bring some people together and just gather them up, see what they need and where their needs are, and give you a chance to understand them a little better.
The only thing I would add to what's already been said is that you will probably get calls from your customers, especially if you provide payment terms. And those customers are going to ask for extended terms. And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking the customer, yeah, I'm willing to do that. In the issue of fairness, what else can we do for you? What other products would you be willing to look at? Some of the other products that we offer that we've been trying to talk to you about, or if it's a retail customer, you're asking us for extended payment terms, and we want to be able to do that. We'd like you to consider moving our position on your retail shelf. These are things that could help you get additional revenue, and I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for something in return. It's a basic law of negotiating.
Great points, Ken.
And Ken, you touched on a piece there that I wanted to circle back to. When should your clients or any business decide, how should they decide what customers to provide those extended payment terms to? How do you work with your clients to determine that piece?
Well, there's at least two criteria, right? The one I just said, what can we talk about? What you can, what can you give us in return? I think the other criteria is many businesses have, businesses should be ranking their customers, at least in their own, internally. Some customers are a lot more profitable than others. So, the customer that's not very profitable right now, or the customer that's really challenging to deal with, this might not, this is probably not the time to extend their payment terms. And some would argue, look, I can't afford to lose any business, but I don't really subscribe to that theory, quite frankly. So I think you have to look at, who are your most profitable customers to work with.
Thank you. And Ursula, same question.
Yeah, I think it's important to be discriminating. I mean, it may seem like a difficult thing to do at this time, but got to look at the profit margins from each of your customers and clients and see where opportunities are there in currently and in future. And the last thing you want to do is overextend your business in order to help another business continue to perform well. You've got to, it's like the oxygen mask, put yours on first kind of metaphor, where it's important for you to focus on the sustainability of your business and not overextend. There's also real leadership opportunities here in terms of how are you evolving as a leader? How are you choosing to be during this time? And it's ironically an amazing growth opportunity. So who do you want to be during this crisis? How do you want to show up every day? And that cumulatively is what makes up who you are as a leader. So it's important to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it from a leadership standpoint. How do you want to look back on this time and see yourself as a leader and how you've evolved and changed. And it's the nature of being a business leader. You're not static. You're a human being who's evolving and changing all the time. And make it conscious, make it your choice about how you're growing into being a better leader during this time.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you very much. I want to shift to the topic, even though there are certainly a lot of unknowns that we have ahead of us. You know, how much longer is this going to last? But I wanted to talk about future state, and you know, I know. Again, the timeline of this is certainly unknown, but to both of you, I want to ask, how do you see things unfolding for businesses as we get beyond this? And Ursula, we'll start with you.
Well, as I've said, I really believe that most businesses have real opportunities right now. There's a lot of latitude in what you can do to expand what you offer. And it's really a time where people will be perhaps more accepting than they might have been in terms of how your brand is evolving. So that's a real positive. I think there are real long-term effects on us even after the pandemic recovery. I also believe we're faced with a couple of important realities that may not have been so clear before. And one of them is that we're all connected, that what we do matters and what we do affects other people. And that really has become so clear. No one is unaffected by this, by geography or economic status or any other parameter. So it's clear that it really speaks to this doing good with your business, which is something that is not only possible, it's becoming even more important. Brands are making decisions based on buying decisions based on whether they're in agreement and alignment with your mission, your willingness to do some good in the world. So the question is then, how do you contribute? How do you want to contribute? And the last thing is that relationships are being really highlighted right now. And business has always been based on relationships, but this has become so highlighted, so clear. And if you form good relationships, you'll have a much better chance of business success. That's a maxim. So pay attention to who you're connected with and how you're connecting with them, and really think about how you're supporting other people, how people are supporting you and your business. So whether it's family and friends or your team, clients and customers, suppliers and other collaborators and joint ventures, listen. That's such an important aspect of building a good relationship, and be kind, be compassionate. And I think that will pay off in all kinds of ways. And I have great hope for the future.
Yeah, thank you. Ken, your thoughts on how you see things unfolding for businesses as we get beyond this?
Well, first, I think Ursula is very wise and correct when she talks about the need to focus on relationships. Business is and will always be about relationships, even in a digital world. The biggest concern I have is I've got some clients that as we're doing financial modeling and looking out through the rest of 2020, they're thinking, well, I'm going to cut back my marketing spend, my sales and marketing spend. And I just don't think this is the time to cut back your sales and marketing spend. I think this is when you're really going to need to focus on that. Obviously, do it in the most efficient way, but communicating with your customer and making sure that you're out there in the marketplace is very critical. Now, having said that, I think business owners are going to have to be realistic about, or at least consider multiple scenarios, where it is going to take a while for their business to come back. just for example, a local restaurant. At some point, we hope relatively soon, the stay-at-home orders will be relieved and we'll be able to, get back together with our friends, et cetera. But there's a lot of people who have been laid off who are not going to be able to go to their local favorite restaurant and have a meal. So it's going to take some time for that to come back, and that has to be considered in our financial scenario planning.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for that. I wanted to open it up now to the audience. If you'll notice, there's a Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen that you're looking at for your login view. Please utilize that to ask our panelists questions that you have for your business. We've got some great expertise here, and would love to open that up now to our attendees. And while we get ready for that, just wanted to let you know that we are continuing these webinars. We've got one tomorrow at 11 a.m. It's the ins and outs of SBA resources. That'll be hosted by our president and CEO, Kit Kramer. And then Thursday at 3 p.m., Amy Jackson will be hosting our Protecting and Nurturing Your Mental Health in Time of Crisis. Those events are up on our website at the ashevillechamber.org. Want to check here. Questions from the audience. No need to be bashful, everyone. We've got some great minds here in the room. Please fire away. All right. Also do want to highlight, Ursula is offering a free masterclass, How to Lead with Impact, right now. And that'll be next Thursday, April 14th at 11 a.m. And we can share those details. What's that? I'm sorry? Oh, Tuesday. Sorry about that. Next Tuesday, April 14th at 11 a.m. We can send out those details for registration. And then Ken is going to be joining Michael at Platinum Group for a webinar this Friday afternoon. He's been holding those as well on a regular basis. So let's see. We've got a question here, and this is for both of y'all. What are the best resources to direct employers who are in need of detailed information? So I'll post that to both of you, whomever would like to go first.
Well, I think there's so many sources of information right now. I don't know if what your inbox looks like, but it may well be flooded with some resources. I think you have to be discriminating right now and make choices about where the best information is likely to be. So the SBA, Small Business Administration, there are chamber resources that they're providing as well. And I think making a good choice around that and keeping up on the latest things without kind of overwhelming yourself with a lot of information is going to be valuable.
This is going to sound like a shameless plug, but I happen to think your wife that is Sandra Dennison, of course, is the head of the local SBTDC. I'll let you explain what that is, Tommy. But my entire career in this town, what I'm doing, I have relied on the SBTDC, and they are a great, fantastic resource. They are extremely well connected. And so they're really one of my go-tos. As you know, Tommy, I called you about a week or two ago trying to get a hold of your wife.
Yeah.
So I would consider her really a great resource, as well, of course, as the chamber.
Thank you. And yes, and they are a SBA funded resource provider here in the area. They're helping with the the disaster lending and getting access to our businesses here in the area with those resources and helping businesses talk through that process. But yeah, thank you, Ken, for that. So this is a great question here. I'm very anxious to hear y'all's responses for this one, but you know, given what y'all are working with currently, if you had to start a business today, what would you start?
So is the question, what kind of business would you start, or how would you start?
It is, what would you start? So what type of business?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I think anything that serves the online community is likely to do well.
Mm-hmm.
The learning curve for that type of business is substantial.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever expertise you can bring to that process is certainly going to speed things up for you. I mean, you also want to look at the longer term success of the business and take a look at, all right, so what is this going to mean after the pandemic? So
Mm-hmm.
not focusing entirely on meeting pandemic needs, I think is going to be really important as well. And also I mean, I think this is actually not a bad time to start a business. This has been shown a lot in past situations, although we haven't faced this particular situation. It's unique.
Mm-hmm.
But businesses that start during a downturn of any kind tend to do better because you're making very lean choices around how you run the business and your expenses and expense and income ratios. So this might be a great opportunity for business owners who've been contemplating that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or would-be entrepreneurs, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. Ken, how about you?
Well, I think you have to think about how are our lives going to be different
Mm-hmm.
once the stay-at-home orders end, and maybe we even find a you know, an antidote to this virus, a vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you think about how did our lives change after, you know, after 9/11, how did they fundamentally change? And I think what I would do, you know, if you really want to think about going into business, think about how people's lives will likely fundamentally change as a result of this. I do think it's reasonable to believe that people will begin to stockpile things, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to. Nobody wants to be out of face masks again, and or toilet paper.
Right.
So I think whether it's consumer products or business products, I think people are going to begin to stockpile. But I would really try to focus on what's going to be vastly different
Mm-hmm.
prior to February of 2020.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. I want to just check in again with our attendees. Any further questions? We've got great questions so far. Also, to answer that first one, if you go to our website, ashevillechamber.org, the listing of resources is all on our COVID-19 resource page to access the SBTDC, Small Business Center, other resources here that are helping small businesses for our attendee earlier. So we are rapidly approaching the 11 o'clock hour, but I want to just basically get some final thoughts from both of you before we end today's session. Ursula, you've got great experience and you work with many different clients here in the area. Some final thoughts that our attendees could take away.
I think the main thing to take away is that there is life after the pandemic, and both planning for that and having a view towards the future is really going to help carry you forward right now. It doesn't mean that you ignore the present. It's essential to deal with that, but I think there is opportunity right now, and there is a future for your business in the longer term.
Excellent, thank you. And Ken, final thoughts for today's audience.
Well, two things. One is we've come up with a flow chart that kind of helps the business owner, first make the decision: do I stay open or do I close? Do I temporarily close? Do I permanently close? Because there are some sort of situations when one should permanently close. And so our website, you'll be able to see that. It's not up there yet, but it should be by I think Wednesday. The other thing is, I do think the money is going to begin to flow from the federal government. I don't know if that's in 72 hours like we've heard, or if it's a week, but the money's going to flow. This will be an unprecedented flow of money from the federal government. And I really urge business owners to really plan and think about how to allocate that money. What's the best way to allocate that resource? Obviously, understand that to the extent that we use it for payroll costs and rent and utilities, it will be a forgivable loan. But there's a lot of catches there that you really need to study pretty clearly. But it's very important to understand that money is going to be necessary, because you're going to have customers who are going to take a long time to pay you. You're going to have customers that aren't going to pay you at all. We're going to have a significant drop in revenue, and it might be hard to match a significant drop in expenses to match that revenue drop. So we really do have to model out how we're going to use that money that's going to start to flow in a few days.
Yeah, thank you. Great points. We had a couple comments over in our chat section, and just want to focus everybody's attention back to there. We had a ask if we could share the websites of our panelists today for Ursula Jorch at Work Alchemy, and then Ken Kaplan of Kaplan CFO Solutions. I've put both of those websites in the chat section for our viewers to look at today. Just want to open it up one more time before we finalize our session today. Any other further questions for our wonderful panelists today? All right. Well, I greatly appreciate everyone taking time to join us today. Ken, Ursula, thank you so much for being here. We'll have these resources up on our website, as well as the recording of this session today to review back to. And of course, as always, if there's anything that we can help with here at the Chamber, or you have additional questions, for our panelists, I'm happy to distribute those and help as well. So again, thank you all. Hope you both have a great day. All right, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy.
Mm-hmm.